Mario Party. Oh, doohey! If you know anything about casual gaming, you know that this series needs no introduction. These are the quintessential party games. Okay, if you don't count racing games. Or fighting games. Or actual board games. And if you don't know anything about gaming, then welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you, and get out while you still can. This is your last chance. Wacky, competitive, friendship testing, fun, I think? All the random mechanics and luck-based events have the ability to hype up or completely enrage any or all players at any given moment. The minigames every round give you the impression that you can always win if you play well enough, but deep down you know that isn't the case, and that it won't truly make you happy. This series has somehow persisted for a quarter century, and though it might not be the phenomenon it once was, it still holds a strong edge over all of its imitators. And I'm not talking any old basic 4-player minigame collections like Crash Bash or Rayman Raving Rabbids. I'm talking your all-in, number-rolling, RNG worshipping, friendship-ending, no mercy, full-contact giant board game. You got your Sonic Shuffle, your Wii Party, your Pac-Man Fever, your Halo Rumble. Okay, that one's fake, but imagine though. Many of the entries on this list I simply can't recommend playing for yourself in good faith. So sit back, relax, and let me do the partying for you. Real quick, remember to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video, it really helps. Nintendo needed a quality third-party studio for Mario's flagship multiplayer title. Okay, other than Mario Kart, they looked to Hudson Soft, a prolific and experienced studio whose most well-known franchises included Bomberman, Bonk, and Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball. They even published 2 games for the Virtual Boy. Now that is commitment to the craft. When Sega decided to make a similar title with Sonic, they also looked to work with a third-party developer. But instead of hiring a reputable studio like Hudson Soft, Sega went cheap and hired a 2-bit, low-effort, bargain bin studio called Hudson Soft. The most recent Sonic title at the time was Sonic Adventure, so it makes sense that the character roster is Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, with the unlockables being Big the Cat, E102 Gamma, Super Sonic, and a Chow, which, as far as I know, is the only instance in which you can play as a Chow in any game, outside of the 2-player versus mode in Sonic Adventure 2. The game has a generally nice look to it, with cell shading and an outline around the characters, but it is very, very simplistic. All the characters seem to have a lower detail version of their character models from Adventure. Overall, it looks just fine. Certainly nothing special, but it does the job. Since the original 3 Mario Parties released on the N64, all in the span of less than 3 years by the way, most of the games trying to emulate its success came out during the GameCube PS2 era. Sonic Shuffle beat all others to the punch, however, releasing in November of 2000 for the Dreamcast. Gee, I can't imagine why it didn't get ported over to other consoles. The basic plot of this game is that Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, which we coincidentally know today as the Dream Team, are summoned through their dreams by a fairy to Imaginary World, the land of dreams, to stop Void, this little green weirdo who's sad and wants to destroy, something or other. The world, I guess? The dream world? I don't remember, it's not important. Also, Eggman is here for some reason, which really is never addressed, and he drops 16-ton weights on you if you're too many spaces away from the objective. Cool. In place of dice blocks, the 4 players each have 7 cards to choose from, each with a different number on them, and the character will move the corresponding number of spaces on the board. Each player is able to see their own cards on the display of their controller's VMU, a device that really made the Dreamcast unique and I'll probably talk about in more detail some other time. On their turn, a player is also free to choose any card owned by any other player, but they can't see what's on it before they choose. So you have a chance to hurt another player by picking one of their better cards, but you also run the risk of pulling an Eggman card. These cards also have a secondary use, being to determine how much damage you will deal during battles with the monsters of Imaginary World. When you land on a pink battle space, you come face to face with, whatever these are. If you press A at the right time while your card is spinning, and the value on your card is equal to or higher than the monster's HP, you win a gem. For defeating minor monsters, you win a Force Jewel, an item which will affect the game or a player in some way. And for the big boss of the level, you can win a Precious Stone. These are essentially your stars, and you need a certain amount of them to win the game. Minigames occur when players land on minigame or duel spaces. Performing well in minigames can win players rings or force jewels. Players can also land on event spaces, which will take the player to a strange one-person side story. In every event, the player will be faced with a multiple choice question, which they must answer correctly in order to win rings or a force jewel. Sometimes the question will be about things that have happened so far in the game, but sometimes they will be something nonsensical like, you meet a Pegasus in the forest, which part of its body do you pet? And you just have to make a guess and then it ends, and sometimes you lose rings and then question every decision that has led you to this moment. Sonic Shuffle has some ambitious ideas as far as its setting, boards, and events, but nothing is nearly as novel or wondrous as it was intended to be. I can't imagine that young children playing this had any idea what was going on most of the time. Are young children supposed to understand what a carbuncle is? Is anybody supposed to know this weirdly specific mythological reference? The setting of Sonic Shuffle's story is a dream world, so all of these boards take place in these fantastical environments with mythical creatures and spectacles you never would have imagined.
What is happening?
It's true, I never would have imagined that. People who have followed me for a while already know about Sonic Shuffle's one redeeming quality. Is it its novel mechanics? Its charming, relatable characters? Its willingness to be bold and try something new despite the unfavorable circumstances of the developers? Nah, it's this fish monster with legs that's found in the frozen over dream version of Emerald Coast. I call him Skatefish. The Chow in a cowboy hat is also pretty good. The minigames in Shuffle are kind of a mixed bag. A lot of them are decent, but I wouldn't say any of them are particularly great. Or particularly good. Lots of these feel like the developers were just throwing spaghetti at the wall. And it wasn't a super clean wall to begin with. It seems like they came up with just enough scenarios for minigames, but didn't have time to think of any interesting mechanics. And some of them are just straight up games of chance, which I guess can be fun if done right, but most of the time they're just annoying, dude. They also felt the need to give most of the minigames context, which is really contrived or overly complicated. Like, you don't need lore for these characters playing tag, they can just play tag. As imaginative as it may be, this game is borderline unplayable if you don't have friends to join you. The CPU players are quite simply unfair to play against. The story mode is especially brutal and annoying. On one hand, you want to keep trying to beat each level and progress through the story, not because the story is compelling, more so to unlock characters and minigames, but each round takes so damn long and your odds of success are pretty low, and at some point you just have to ask yourself how many hours of your life are you willing to waste here. This game is certainly serviceable if you have 3 friends to play with and nothing better to do. Some of the minigames are fun, and you can at least enjoy discussing the constant absurdity of it all. But, and I know this will sound insane coming from a gaming-focused YouTuber, if you have the option, y'all should just go outside. Take a walk, go to the park, watch some birds, kick a ball, do literally anything else. As much as I want to jump into this, let's discuss the impact of maps and the camera in these faux board game party video games. It probably seems like a small detail at first, but I'd invite you to reconsider. A board game is designed with the knowledge that all players will be able to see the entire board at any given time, and in this genre of video game, you need the option to always be able to view the rest of the board, or at least the map. Mario Party doesn't usually show you the entire board at once, but the consistent camera angle means that it's easier for players to keep a record in their head of where every other player, star, and meaningful space is, in addition to letting a player view the rest of the board at will during their turn. A lot of these party board games want to get fancy by having different dynamic camera angles each turn, but you need to consistently come back to a singular angle so people can evaluate their situations. Now, to appropriately set the tone for this game, I think it's important to observe the very first thing this game shows you. Pac-Man's 3D model doing a motion capture dance. Look at this thing. Does this look right? Does this look human-shaped to you? Here's the character select screen. All your favorite Pac-Man characters are here. Yep, here they are, all the Pac-Man characters. Yeah, to be honest, this game doesn't have the slightest bit to do with Pac-Man. It's literally just the most marketable property Namco owns. None of the gameplay or theming is even remotely tied to the Pac-Man franchise. I like how this screen doesn't even tell you the names of any of the characters. Like, if this was Pac, Ms. Pac, and the Ghosts, this wouldn't be a problem. But I can assure you that less than 5% of the children playing this game have ever touched Tekken, Soul Calibur, or Ridge Racer, so there's a very slight chance that they might not immediately recognize Raiko, Azeroth, Tiger, and Heihachi here. The text on these tutorial screens seriously hurts my eyes. Sure, this sort of text might fly in a logo or on an arcade cabinet, but the serving size for this font is definitely not in paragraphs. The goal of Pac-Man Fever is to reach the end of the board, rather than to collect the most of something like most of these games. Movement around the game board, however, is not random like you would generally see in this genre. The amount of spaces each player moves is determined by their placement in minigames. Every round starts with the "Oh Jesus, we're being abducted." The minigames here are of average quality if you are being very generous. The majority of them are very bland. There are some decent ones in here, even some that can keep you engaged, but as will become a theme in this video, there isn't much that you would be super eager to come back and play. The only thing that makes any of these minigames resemble the titular series at all is the inclusion of occasional fruit imagery. Pac-Man Fever repeats an old mistake from the original Mario Party in the form of single-player minigames, interrupting the quote-unquote action to have one player attempt to collect an ultimately inconsequential amount of tokens is just not a smart way to keep players engaged. The tokens, by the way, are meant for these specific shopping squares that you have to land on, and can be used to send players forward or backward a set number of spaces, or to buy these lottery ticket things which win currency that can be exchanged for more minigames to use in the minigame mode. See, this is precisely the type of situation where players need to be able to see the map at a moment's notice. Sending a player forward or backwards is so expensive and not very likely to impact the outcome, but there are situations where it would be useful, but only if it will send players to certain spaces on the board, and it's not terribly likely that you know the exact location of all the other players all the time, let alone the 3 to 6 spaces in front of and behind them. The spaces that make you go backwards were facing forwards, and the spaces that make you go forwards were facing backwards. I know it's not really relevant, but it feels relevant. As you might imagine, the character and event animations in this game leave something to be desired, but are perfectly functional. I do appreciate how everyone on the board has a nice little animation for when another player is passing them though. That's the type of nice touch that we don't see much in these games, if at all. As a Mario Party knockoff, this game is everything you expect and less. It's bland, it's predictable, the ideas they did have were poorly executed, and the characters walk so slowly between spaces, like seriously, what is taking you so long? Hurry up! It's Pac-Man Party. Pac-Man Party is the most nothing game I have ever played. Honestly, I can't confidently describe this experience as playing, because that would imply that I was enjoying myself, or at the very least, having some impact on the outcome of this series of events. But I wasn't. This game just kind of happens to you. It's essentially a Pac-Man visual novel. Now, before I tell you the plot, here's a quick question for you. What are these little Pac-Man collectibles called? You're all wrong, they're called cookies now. Cookies? Do you not think these children can understand the concept of dots? You've already insulted them enough by serving them an undercooked subpar gaming experience. Why insult their intelligence as well? Okay, so the plot is that the owner of the Pac-Dot Cookie Bakery Factory Company place writes a letter to Pac-Man telling him that some thief is on the way to steal his bestest cookie recipe. How bad is this thief that you would know about this plan far enough in advance to inform somebody via letter? Anyhow, Blinky tries to steal the letter from Pac-Man, and then they challenge each other to some type of game. And they do this in several locations, but obviously I did not care to finish the story because why would I do that to myself? So in this game, you start each turn with one of a few semi-random mini-game things like Plinko or a slot machine to choose how many spaces each player moves. Spaces serve entirely different purposes in this game. game, however. Each space is like a piece of property. Players build castles on spaces by landing on them. Why castles? I don't know, don't ask me. If a player lands on a castle which they already own, they will earn a cookie bonus. If any other player, or players, land on that castle, however, all 4 players will compete in a minigame. If one of the attacking players wins the minigame, then they claim ownership of the castle. Castles can also be upgraded in size if the player claims a space next to a castle which they already own. Larger castles are more valuable, but they also contain more spaces, which means that other players are more likely to land on them and attack. This game is also painfully drawn out because some of these spaces are like a mile apart from each other, and you have to watch whichever player is moving travel between them in real time. Like there's literally a river between these 2 spaces. What the hell, man? The minigames themselves are, if nothing else, more creative and visually appealing than those in Pac-Man Fever. And I should give a bit of credit to the fact that they tried to come up with fun ways to incorporate the fact that they tried to come up with fun ways to incorporate the Wii remote into the controls for many of them. Conceptually, a number of these are right on par with Mario Party. I could absolutely see a Mario Party minigame where you roll up spaghetti with a fork, or compete to cut the most cookies, or twirl a bigger pizza pie. As far as controls, however, most of these fail to deliver. The mechanics are often there, but it never feels as smooth as it could. A somewhat significant portion of the minigames are also too long, entirely luck-based, or don't necessarily allow all players to, play. Take, for example, Candy Crash. One at a time, each player chooses one sweet to eat, but they must be careful because every removed piece will affect the structural integrity of the tower, upon which there happens to be a bomb. Pinky goes first, safely eating a macaron and getting 20 points. But then we have Patra, who, by the way, is one of the best and most adorable character designs I've ever seen, despite being stuck in a throwaway Pac-Man Party game. She eats a big honking cupcake, which causes the tower to crumble immediately and everybody explodes and dies. Everybody, that is, except Pinky. It seems rather ridiculous to me that the 2 players who have not even had a chance to participate get punished the same as she who royally screwed everything the first chance she got. Look, Patra, I love you, and you're still the only good thing about this game, but come on, man. Apparently, when the team was told to design minigames that felt more like Mario Party, some of them took that a bit too literally. There are several minigames that are nearly, if not exact carbon copies of games already done by the plumber. You remember that Bumper Balls minigame from the original Party? Sure you do. It's very likely that you've seen it. It's one of the most memorable minigames in the series, and it also appeared in Mario Party 2, Mario Party The Top 100, and Mario Party Superstars. Well, apparently Namco liked that one too, because they put it in this game 5 times. 5 times. 5 times. How desperate were you guys for ideas? I do appreciate that this game where you inflate the Pookie. What is it called? Pookie? Puka. This game where you inflate the Puka is at least making a nod to Dig Dug. There are also power pack dots here, and I guess they just give you a ridiculous advantage in any given minigame, but it's really dumb. I don't think having an automatic win button benefits this genre of game at all. Well, I say it's an automatic win, but nothing is guaranteed with controls this poor. One of this game's biggest drawbacks is the fact that games are not based on a number of rounds, but rather a target number of pack cookie things that need to be collected for a player to win. This is also the case in Sonic Shuffle, where you need to be the first to reach a target number of collectibles, but games of Shuffle tend to be more consistent in how long they take to finish, and you're still seeking a more valuable item than your basic currency, as precious stones are like stars. In Shuffle and Mario Party, there are only so many spaces on the board, which guarantees that players will eventually reach the important things. But in Pac-Man Party, it's so easy to lose tons of cookies at once, and with no turn limit, there's no guarantee that anybody can ever, get the required number of points to win and, end the game. Oh yeah, this game also has boss fights. Absolutely no need for this whatsoever. I'm not going to discuss them because I don't want to validate their existence. Oh no. Okay. Is that an octopus with a kazoo? Oh, that's Captain Tentacle. Who? One of the options on the main menu of this game is the ability to play 3 classic Namco arcade titles, Galaga, Dig Dug, and Pac-Man naturally. I think they should make a game based on those instead. Here's what I would propose. You still have the Mario Party based format and whatever castle building or cookie collecting nonsense they wanted to put on the board. But take out the cheap generic minigames and put in variations of classic Namco arcade titles. You could have players try to get the highest score within a short time limit, or you could have them all play at once. Say, for example, a 3v1 game based on the original Pac-Man, where one player is Pac-Man collecting dots and the other 3 are ghosts. Or a level of Galaga, but all 4 players are on the screen at the same time, competing for points. I think this would have been a much more novel, successful, and memorable game. But it doesn't seem like that's what they wanted it to be. At the time, Namco was trying to make stuff more like the big boys, because they were pushing for Pac-Man to be the next big platformer mascot. And I suppose this is one way to try and achieve that. By the way, Namco, I've said this before and I'll say it again, Dig Dug Battle Royale. You already did Pac-Man 99, people would eat this up. Why aren't you returning my calls? It may have more personality on the surface than Pac-Man Fever does, but that doesn't change the fact that this game might be the most mind-numbing experience on this entire list. And that's saying something. Crash Bandicoot had already tried his hand at the party game genre, releasing Crash Bash back in 2000. As far as I can tell, people liked it, or at least thought it was alright. The same cannot be said, however, for the 2006 Nintendo DS title, Crash Boom Bang. I did not even know this game existed until, a few years ago. The starting roster of this game consists of 4 characters. Crash, of course, Crash's sister Coco, who is suffering from Rouge the Bat long arm syndrome, Pinstripe Potoroo, because sure, and Purah. Yeah, remember Purah? Coco's little tiger friend from the 3rd Crash game? This is him now, apparently. Bipedal with jean shorts. Polar has suffered the same fate, in case you were curious, but he's an unlockable character. This game's single-player mode has a story, though it might as well not because it's so poorly fleshed out that it adds absolutely nothing to the experience. There's some rich dude who wants a super big power crystal, and I guess recruits Crash and some other dummies to get it for him. I'm not really sure why they end up competing with one another, or why any of these characters are actually motivated to be here, but I have not sunk low enough to start caring about the cohesiveness of the plot of this cheap DS party game. At least not yet. Crash Boom Bang explains to you essentially nothing in terms of how to play. This guy in the first cutscene suggests that you try to get to the end, but that it's not the only important factor, and then sends you on your merry way. The game does not describe the mechanics or hazards of any of the boards, does not inform you of how to collect or lose Wumpa Fruits, and for that matter, does not inform you whatsoever that your goal is to collect Wumpa Fruits. Here's the map of the first game board. There are 2 paths you can choose to get to the end. The longer curved path, which is less risky but contains more spaces and will take longer to get through, or this shorter path, which could get you to the finish line faster, but every other space has a cage which will capture you and ship you off to a deserted island. But tell me, looking at this, would you have figured that out simply by looking at the map screen? Does this little blue, vaguely crate-shaped symbol read as put you in a cage and throw you on a boat like you're in f***ing Madagascar? I don't think it does. The item system in this title is also strange. Every player starts the game with a selection of items, and you pick them up seemingly completely at random throughout each board. Some of these items can force one player to only move a specific amount of spaces on their next turn, some are simply cosmetic, which makes no sense whatsoever, and some can even affect the board, like the spatula, which flips over a space of your choice to reveal some mystery type of space underneath. All of the minigames are played with the DS stylus, which is neat and a good way to take advantage of the handheld system. It would help if the minigames were more, enjoyable, but I still totally respect it. The minigames are your standard/substandard fare, ranging from a bad Super Monkey Ball clone to an aerial dogfight where your goal is actually to collect fruits rather than taking down the other players, to this weird baseball minigame where you have to predict where the pitcher is going to throw the ball. It's really weird and hard, and I can't imagine many young players ever fully understood this one. If you happen to get a minigame that's actually in the form of 2 one-on-one duels, the game will make you wait for the CPU players to finish. And this can take a long time. A long time. Oh my god. The thing that truly hinders the player's ability to enjoy this game is the timer. They put a timer on the single player mode of a game where everything is constantly changing and you have to read directions on the fly. I understand that it's a holdover from the multiplayer mode, but this is how players will be learning the rules of the game, explore their item menu, and learn how to play every minigame. There's a timer almost every time there's text, so you only have about 10 to 15 seconds to read it at most. And it's not because everything is perfectly intuitive and immediately understandable. The controls for minigames are sometimes confusing, often because you didn't have time to read and digest the information given, and there's no practice mode. You're just expected to get it right away. And, by the way, the other players can send pictures of themselves emoting, which prevent you from reading the text boxes. This crap goes for the items too. You only get 10 seconds to look through your items and decide if/what to use. Like, what's really the point of this? Is people not pressing start on these screens really such a common issue that you felt it necessary to include these? Is the pace of your game just too slow? I mean, that one I could kind of understand. Without the timers, you would realize that this game does not have great pacing and is not as mechanically deep as it would like you to think it is. One thing this game has that most of the others don't is actually character customization, but it's weird. By default, everyone has an extremely basic outfit, even the ones who didn't have an outfit before but are now too anthropomorphized to be naked. If you find yourself waiting around during a mini game in which you are not taking place, which yes, actually happens quite a bit, you can bet on which player you think will win. However, if you have the sale flyer item, you have the option to visit this little hidden shopping screen. You can buy many different items here, but these items include articles of clothing attributed to the different characters. These do not help you in the course of gameplay at all whatsoever, but you can use them just like any other item and have your character change into an article of clothing. It's certainly a unique feature, but is it good? I guess I'll let you decide that. Depends on how much you really want to see Crash Bandicoot in a miniskirt. I know there's some of you out there. Most of the boards are non-linear and have players searching for key items. The board doesn't end until all of them are found. You don't necessarily have to find any of them to win, but they are worth quite a lot of points, and it's also in your best interest to end this experience as quickly as you can. The key items are scattered across random checkered spaces around the map, which basically just means you have to land on as many different spaces as you can and just hope to stumble upon some. You can use a magnifying glass item to see where key items might be, but if you don't got one of those, it's all up to luck. I don't know exactly how many minigames are here, but it feels like about 10. And I hope you like the few minigames that are here because you're going to be playing them a lot. And you'll also probably be watching them a lot. It is simply not very exciting to watch 60 seconds of two CPU characters fall very, very slowly to the ground. It's fun. Quite a lot of these minigames actually involve blowing into the DS microphone. Surely your parents wouldn't get tired of hearing that during a road trip. There are also boss battles against the purple Viscount guy at the end of every board. None of them have any context or story relevance. The fact that you're fighting him isn't even mentioned in the story and doesn't seem to fit, and I can most certainly tell you that none of them are fun. I can't say I had the worst time playing this one, but the stages are uninspired, the minigames are both derivative and repetitive. Overall, I definitely can't recommend this one. Not just because it's confusing or thin on content, but primarily because it's really pretty boring. Nintendo themselves actually made a knockoff of their own series. And no, I'm not talking about Mario Party Island Tour. Mario is already one of the most family-friendly and approachable properties in gaming, but if Grandma and Uncle Larry just can't comprehend any of what's happening here, maybe Wii Party will be more their speed. This was part of the Wii series that is easy to forget is an actual series. Wii Sports, Wii Play, Wii Music, Wii Fit, Wii Party, and Wii Chess apparently. The basic gameplay is probably the most simple out of all these titles. It's just a board game. You roll a 6-sided die, move that number of spaces, and on some spaces a thing will happen that results in you moving forward, backward, or switching with another player. Sometimes you'll come up to a gate or obstacle of some sort and need to roll a high enough number to pass. Failing this roll usually just results in you having to wait another turn to try again. But sometimes you'll have an event where rolling too low means you get sent to the inside of a volcano and have to travel several spaces to escape back to the main board. Be the first one to reach the top of the mountain and roll a 6 to win. The minigames in Wii Party are pretty alright for the most part. There are most certainly some duds in here, but they're forgettable. Like the good kind of forgettable, where it might make you salty for a turn, but probably won't ruin your experience. By the way, the CPU difficulty only reflects how well they do in minigames, plus a little bit of luck. Because there are no decisions to be made on the board, it has no bearing on their ability to strategize. And since there is so much random crap happening throughout the board, the CPU players' performances seem to have very little impact on the outcome of the game. At least that's how it appears to me. Overall, the game didn't wow me. It had a lot of very basic elements to it. I can see families having some fun with it though, at least until Grandma gets sent to actual hell. There are several other game modes, some of which are pretty fun, but that's not at all what we're here for. It is interesting how the main menu gives every game mode equal space on the screen, so even though it's listed first, the board game isn't necessarily treated as the main or default mode. You can consider all your options, even with new players. It would be easy to assume that Wii Party is just a testing ground for some ideas that may or may not have been good enough for Mario Party. And yeah, to an extent it does feel like that. But it's also its own experience, and it seems like it was well received, even if it's not talked about much these days. This was most likely a test to see if developer ND Cube could produce a solid Mario Party style game, so that Nintendo could assign them to work on the next entry in that series. And boy did that not go well. Wait, what's that over... Oh no. Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival is Nintendo's great big prank on the entire Animal Crossing fanbase. This game is already pretty infamous online, partially thanks to one Scott the Wozniak, but primarily because of how remarkably unremarkable it was. Released in 2015 as nothing more than an excuse to sell amiibos and these amiibo card things, it can best be described as the most basic parts of Mario Party and the Game of Life combined. The bells are coins, the happy points are stars, you get it. You roll a die, land on a space, and an event happens? Event, that's what we'll call it. Like, your character does a thing that you might do in an actual Animal Crossing game, but you don't even get to do it. It's just a 5-second video. Not quite a fulfilling substitute for minigames, or an actual Animal Crossing game. It's like having paper-mache pizza. It's presented to you as if it were pizza, but there isn't really any pizza substance to it. This game presents to you the idea of fun, but does not let you partake in it. The goal is to have the most happy points by the end of the game. You gain or lose happy points from landing on spaces with certain events, meeting special characters, and earning or losing bells. The turnip-based stock market is a part of this game. In mainline games, Joan the Warthog, or Daisy May in New Horizons, visits your town every Sunday morning and you can buy a number of turnips. The price at which you can sell them changes every day, but they rot after a while, making them worthless. In Amiibo Festival, Joan shows up and will offer to sell the players turnips, which they can choose to sell later on as the prices fluctuate. Other non-villager characters will show up to make stuff happen and slightly alter the game, including Red, Chip, Jingle, Katrina, Jack, Dr. Shrunk, and Now this game does bend the criteria I set at the beginning of the video, because even though it does have minigames, you don't play them during the actual board game mode. I think most of you would agree that Amiibo Festival is worth mentioning though, especially since it's another strange case of Nintendo attempting to use their classic party game formula for a franchise other than Mario. Except it's not quite like Mario. It's like a little cobbled together project concept bundled with a couple plastic statues, which were obviously the real selling point here. It's possible they weren't even necessarily trying to make it like Mario Party. They may have been going for a more traditional board game feeling, but I just can't figure out what the angle is supposed to be. They were obviously experimenting with making mini-games, but they must have given up on incorporating them. They probably couldn't find a place to include them without breaking the already incredibly sluggish flow of the gameplay loop. There are 12 quote-unquote different boards in the game, one for each month of the year, and each day of the month acts as one turn. But they aren't really different, are they? There is basically no variety in gameplay experience, and no reason to play it more than once. They tried to make the game fan-service-y, but it mostly just ends up falling flat, and it made quite a few people upset. The way Nintendo would tease this game as if it was a legitimate Animal Crossing for Wii U, oh, they knew what they were doing. It appears to me, and most other people, that Amiibo Festival exists for one reason and one reason only: to sell Animal Crossing Amiibo figures. And it may not have even done that very well. Man, why did they try to make Shrek chibi? Surely they knew this wasn't going to work. They must have. They must have. Right? Shrek Super Party. They really thought they would manifest something special by putting super in the title. This game is such honestly, I don't know how to explain this thing. Okay, so the way this game works is that you have to collect magical bug drops for some reason. You could find them around the map, but the main focus is on these bugs that you see at the end of each minigame. The player who placed third gets to swap one bug from their group with any from another player's group. Then the second place player gets to swap 2 bugs, and first place gets to swap 3. Bigger bugs are worth more points, but you also get rewarded for having bugs that match in your group. And at least they tried to make something unique here. They just didn't explain it very well or make it appealing. When rolling to move, instead of a die, you drop a ball on this physics-based hole board thingy, and whatever the ball lands in, you go to the next space of that type. You also get to individually choose which of these paths you want to start on, but it doesn't really make a difference, other than if you choose a path that another player is already going down, you won't earn as many rewards as they have from the same spaces. The mini-games are your average 45-second nonsensical activities. Well, below average in this case. Am I having fun right now? Is that what this is? Have I been misunderstanding fun my whole life? Some of them have swampy or fairy tale based locations, but aren't actually very unique or creative. Although, there is one minigame that's directly based on a scene from the movie. Shrek has accidentally found himself in this night fighting arena where everyone's trying to kill him, and you as the player are tasked to ride on a barrel and flatten more of these knights than your opponents. I will give the developer some credit for actually attempting to make the game look like it's set in the world of its source material, which I can't say about everyone on this list. Outside of making the game's environments and bug-based scoring though, nothing else quite feels like Shrek. The fact that none of these characters have voice acting should tell you quite a bit about the game and the thought that went into it. The only one with a voice is the weird magic mirror guy who's acting as the host/narrator, I guess. None of the player characters even have facial animations. I mean literally none whatsoever. It's a cheap, rushed, bland license cash grab with no definitive style, and that's all it was ever meant to be. I was kind of expecting this one to be infuriating, but it was just such an empty experience. There wasn't enough substance here for me to get emotionally invested. It's seriously mind-numbing, and if I wasn't playing it to record footage, I would have shut it off within 5 minutes of starting it up. It may or may not surprise you to learn that this game was developed by Mass Media, the same company that released Pac-Man Fever just 2 months earlier. Look, the most helpful thing I can say about this game is to not even touch it. I would recommend it to absolutely nobody on Earth. You will genuinely find it difficult to sit through the experience. There's no cutscene? There's nothing at the end? It just ends. The most recent release we've discussed so far, the premise of this one is pretty simple. Mario Party, but garnished with some good old-fashioned blunt force trauma. With local split screen and online action with up to 8 players, Pummel Party advertises itself as a friendship ender. The basics of this game are just like Mario Party. Your goal is to collect the most goblets, which are just like stars, and keys to open treasure chests, which are just like coins. The biggest twist to the formula is that each player now has an HP bar, which can be depleted by landing on Reaper tiles, which have been claimed by other players, or by other players using items to directly deal damage. Oh no.
I don't think Jack likes you.
What makes you say that? These items are generally quite silly. Some of them are ranged items like an extendable boxing glove. What? Oh!
So, I was just kidding.
And some can target players anywhere on the map like the eggplant bomb, but only if you're able to navigate it around the board in time. There are also non-attacking items like a health pack, a space-swapping portal, a protective cactus disguise, and an arcade machine, which allows you to challenge another player to an arcade classic like paddles for the reward of a trophy. The music on many of the boards has a weird ethereal vibe to it that completely undermines the intended intense nature of the game. Like, it almost completely takes away the game's ability to get you invested in the action. Granted, it is one of the less important aspects of the game, since if you get a group of at least 4 friends to play, it's unlikely that you'll be hearing too much of the music and it probably won't impact your experience too much. But I only played it with one friend and it was definitely something I noticed. The minigames, while far and away the best part of this experience, don't necessarily feel like they fit the environment that the game's boards are attempting to create. Some of them are definitely good Mario Party style minigames, but I'm not really getting the supposed ultra-violent vibes here. And to be honest, despite being the best element of the game, which, to be fair, does not have very many elements, it doesn't really feel like the minigames affect anything in a significant way. They don't give you keys the same way that you would get coins in Mario Party. Instead, you get points, which, I'm not entirely sure what those do. Really, the biggest selling point of this one is that it's a board game style party game on a non-Nintendo platform and with online play, and it's only $15. It's about as knockoff-ish as knockoffs get, and that's entirely on purpose. And if you want a game that will ruin your whole experience with bonus stars you didn't prepare for, this game delivers. But after the release of 2 Mario Party games on the Switch with online co-op, I rarely hear this title mentioned anymore. What the fuck is this? Garfield is back with another largely unoriginal plunge into the world of video games. This time, instead of racing around, they're walking around. Sure, I absolutely cannot and will not justify spending $40 to review this, but I have read some reviews, seen trailers, and watched a video on it by Mark's Rec Room, which I will link in the description below. It's worth a watch. One thing I can say with certainty is that this game is aimed at children. Not that the other ones weren't, but you can especially feel it here. It is not meant to have deep mechanics or perfectly balanced minigames. The minigame selection in Lasagna Party is it's f***ing bumper balls again. The minigames are a mixed bag, very similar to Pac-Man Party. Some attempt to be original, some attempt to be based around the Garfield source material, aka food, and some are entirely ripped out of old Mario parties. The game board portion of this game attempts to be a familiar yet distinct experience, and it more or less succeeds at that. It has its own quirky item system and a board that's at least functional. The package overall seems to be passable, but I don't see it being much fun for anybody over the age of 9 or 10, which, you know, is kind of the point, but I'm still not sure it would make for a very fulfilling experience relative to the price point. I actually got a chance to chat with Mark about why Mario Party has lasted so long as a series and what it does better than all of these would-be competitors. You know, beyond the fact that most of these titles were rushed and cheaply produced with the intention of simply making children think it would be like Mario Party, and he mentioned that no game has been able to rival the effectiveness of stars and coins as objectives. In Mario Party, no matter how many turns your game lasts, getting a star is a big deal. Getting to a star space and being short on coins, that can have a big impact on the outcome. And stealing a star might just cause a fight to break out. By the way, if you intentionally play 50-turn games of Mario Party on a regular basis, I don't think I can trust you as a person. Go check Mark out. If you like this, you'll like him. So what did we learn here today? Nothing, probably? We already know that any franchise Nintendo makes will have its cheap imitations, even if some of those come from Nintendo themselves. And we also know that game companies will continue to publish low-quality software as long as they can make it seem similar enough to an actual good franchise.
And don't get me wrong, there are definitely positives to be found in some of these games, but you really gotta seek them out.
It seems very difficult to build a game like this. It strikes the perfect balance of solid base gameplay, variety, player autonomy, and just enough BS to make it interesting but still feel like anybody could win it. The games in this series must be enjoyable on some level because of the memories they provided to players, even including myself, for so many years. People continue to purchase and play these games to this day because of their casual, easy to pick up nature and the strong attachments they have to the series and the entertainment it has provided them throughout their lives. Obviously, I'm only kidding. People just like to be Yoshi.